You won't believe what happened to this single dad on the coldest night of the year, and when you find out who he let into his home, you'll be shocked. Before I begin, if you enjoy stories about kindness, second chances, and unexpected miracles, make sure to like this video and subscribe, because this one might just warm your heart forever. It was the middle of January, and the snowstorm outside looked like something out of a nightmare. Wind howled through the trees like a living thing, and thick flakes of snow spun wildly, blinding anyone foolish enough to be outside. Inside a small, worn-down house on the edge of town, Daniel Hayes sat at the kitchen table, a steaming mug of tea between his hands. The light above him flickered, casting long shadows across the chipped counters. Daniel wasn't rich. In fact, money had been tight ever since his wife passed away 3 years ago, leaving him alone to raise their 8-year-old daughter, Emily. He worked long hours as a mechanic, scraping by, trying to be both a father and a mother. Life was a constant balancing act, bills against groceries, work against quality time with Emily, but he never complained. Every night, he reminded himself that as long as Emily had a warm bed, food on the table, and love in her heart, they would be okay. Tonight, though, his thoughts were heavy. His boss had told him earlier that morning that business was slow, and there might not be enough work to keep everyone on full-time. The fear of losing his only income gnawed at him. But just as he was about to get up and check on Emily, who was coloring in the living room, there came a loud knock at the door. At first, he thought it must be the wind or maybe a tree branch hitting the siding. But then it came again, 3 sharp knocks. Confused, he went to the door and peered through the frosted glass. All he could see was a dark silhouette standing in the blizzard. When he opened the door, the cold air rushed in like an icy wave. Standing there was a woman tall, wrapped in a long black coat dusted with snow, her dark hair damp and clinging to her face. She looked exhausted, her cheeks red from the cold, her hands trembling. "Please," she said, her voice shaking, my car broke down about a mile back. There's no signal out here, and the snow is too deep to walk much farther. Could I stay here until the storm passes?" Daniel hesitated. It wasn't every day a stranger appeared on your doorstep in the middle of nowhere during a blizzard. But looking into her eyes, there was something there, something vulnerable. He nodded and stepped aside. "Come in before you freeze." She stepped inside, and immediately, Emily peeked from the living room, her big blue eyes curious. "Daddy, who's that?" "This is, Daniel realized he didn't know the woman's name. "Maya," she said softly, brushing snow from her coat. "Maya Lennox." The hours passed slowly as the storm raged outside. Daniel offered her tea, and Emily, never shy, sat with her, asking questions about where she came from, if she had kids, what her favorite food was. Maya smiled politely but gave vague answers, steering the conversation away from herself. Daniel couldn't help noticing her hands. Even though they were delicate, there were faint marks of stress, chewed nails, fine lines around the knuckles. Her coat was expensive, but she wore it like she didn't care about appearances. Something about her didn't add up. Eventually, Emily fell asleep on the couch, and Daniel went to get a blanket for her. When he came back, Maya was standing by the window, staring out into the swirling snow. She looked sad. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She turned to him, and for a moment, he thought she might cry. But instead, she smiled faintly. "I'm fine. Just thinking about how strange life is. One moment, you're in control of everything. The next, you're completely at someone else's mercy." Daniel chuckled lightly. "I know the feeling. Life has a way of humbling you." They talked a little more, and eventually, they both drifted to sleep, Daniel in his armchair, Maya on the couch opposite Emily. The next morning, the storm had cleared, leaving the world glittering under a fresh coat of snow. Maya's car was still buried somewhere down the road, but a tow truck was already on its way. As she stood in the doorway, ready to leave, she reached into her bag and pulled out a simple white card. "If you ever need anything," she said, handing it to him, "call this number." Daniel glanced at the card. It had no title, no company name, just Maya Lennox and a phone number in clean, elegant print. Weeks passed, and life went back to its familiar grind. Then one afternoon, Daniel came home to find an envelope in his mailbox. Inside was a letter and a check so large it made his hands shake. The letter read, "Daniel, you opened your door to a stranger when you had nothing to gain. You treated me like a person, not a problem to solve. I'm the CEO of Lennox Industries. That night, I wasn't looking for shelter from the snow, I was looking for shelter from a life that had forgotten what kindness looked like. Consider this a small token of gratitude. Use it to build the life you and Emily deserve. Maya." Daniel sat down on the porch steps, staring at the check, tears stinging his eyes. He thought about the cold night, the woman standing in the snow, and how sometimes the smallest acts of kindness ripple out in ways we could never imagine. From that day on, Daniel didn't just survive, he thrived. He bought a new home, opened his own repair shop, and made sure to help others whenever he could. Emily grew up watching her father's example, learning that real wealth isn't measured in dollars but in kindness given freely. And sometimes, on snowy nights, Daniel would stand by the window, smile to himself, and wonder how different life might have been if he'd left the door closed. So if you take one thing from this story, let it be this: you never know who you're helping when you choose kindness. It could change their life, and yours. The check sat on Daniel's kitchen table for hours that day, untouched, like it might vanish if he blinked too long. Emily came home from school and noticed it immediately. "Daddy, what's that?" she asked, pointing with a curious grin. Daniel hesitated. "It's from a friend." "Is it enough to buy me a puppy?" she asked, half joking, half serious. Daniel laughed softly, ruffling her hair. "It's enough to buy you 100 puppies, but we'll start with one." That night, after Emily had gone to bed, Daniel called the number on the card. It rang only once before a calm, familiar voice answered.